Good evening. You heard about the term biodiversity a lot in the last half an hour or so. But looking outside, you might wonder why we are talking about biodiversity in a city like Hong Kong. We are surrounded by high rises, and if you look at the harbour on both sides, it's all being reclaimed for hundreds of years. But actually, Hong Kong biodiversity is of global significance. Hong Kong is within global biodiversity hotspots called the Indo-Burma hotspots that spans from Myanmar across Southeast Asia all the way to coastal South China, and Hong Kong is part of that global hotspots. It's one of the 35 known hotspots in the world. But you might say, oh, Hong Kong's a small place. The Indo-Burma hotspot is so large. We might be only contributing a small fragment to the importance. But actually, Hong Kong is also a key biodiversity area within the hotspot, meaning we are of high conservation priority. Now, in Simon's video, it showed a lot of lovely wildlife and plants we have, and all the numbers, and I wouldn't repeat it, but you might wonder, oh, there's a lot of species in Hong Kong. What does it mean? Very often we like to compare with UK, and UK is more than 200 times the size of Hong Kong. But if you look at the plants and animals in UK, it has about 3,800 species of flowering plants, about double the number we got here in Hong Kong. Less than 600 species of birds, just more than what we have recorded here. But for all the other mammals, amphibians, reptiles, butterflies, moths, dragonflies, fish, they got a lot less, much less than what we have in Hong Kong. And more important is that in such a small place like Hong Kong, very crowded with over 7 million people, we have some wildlife that are known only from Hong Kong and nowhere else in the world. For instance, the Roma's tree frog, the Bogadex burrowing lizard, and also the very recently discovered Maypole bent-wing firefly. So if these species are gone, then they'll disappear from the face of the earth. And why Hong Kong has such a high biodiversity? We are actually very lucky in terms of our geographic position. We are situated between two geographic areas, between the Oriental and the Palearctic region. So we have both the tropical and subtropical species. And we used to be covered with broadleaf forests that span from the tropical Southeast Asia all the way to Russia. And as you know, the forest is actually a very good place for evolution to occur. So that's why in the East Asia region, we have an exceptionally rich biodiversity. And in addition to that, Hong Kong is situated along the East Asian, Australasian bird migratory routes. So every year, tens of millions of water birds migrate from the breeding grounds in Siberia or even Alaska, northern China, all the way down. Some would winter in Australia or New Zealand. So every year they complete this long migratory journey, and Hong Kong is kind of in the middle of it. So every year we have tens of thousands of water birds and shorebirds wintering in Hong Kong in the Maypole Deep Bay area or passing through. And Hong Kong, although it's a small place, but we have a very rugged terrain. The highest peak at Tan Mo Shan is over 950 meters high. So we have a lot of mountain streams and valleys. And because the terrain is so rugged, we still have a lot of countryside that is untouched by urbanization. And we also have over 100 islands and some act as refuge for our relic species. So a number of the endemic amphibians and reptiles are only found in offshore islands and not in the mainland. Because in the mainland, they're probably driven to extinction long time ago by urbanization or by invasive species. And Hong Kong, in the western part of our waters, is under the influence of the Pearl River that carries a lot of fresh water and sediments to it. So in the western waters, it's kind of brackish, and we have specialized species that lives in there, like the Chinese grey dolphin. And also we have the mudflats and mangroves in the Deep Bay area because of that. But in the eastern waters, it's under the influence of the ocean. So the water is relatively clear, and that's very good for our corals. And the terrestrial habitats and species are actually quite well protected in recent history. We have the country park system with about 40% of our land that we are proud of. So that also contributes to the rich biodiversity we still have in Hong Kong. And if you look at this biodiversity, it's not just about the animal and plant life. It's also of very important value to us. If you look at our freshwater supply, about 20 to 30% of our fresh water relies on rainwater collected in our mountains, in our forests, and they were channeled into our reservoir from the catch water. And if you calculate that based on what we pay for the fresh water from Dongjiang, that's about $1 to $1.6 billion per year, and that's free of charge. And obviously they produce oxygen, clean the air, absorb carbon, regulate the climate, provide food for us. And also very important is they is a very good venue for our outdoor recreation. So in 2013 alone, 12.7 million people visited our country parks, and that's not counting some of our offshore islands or the countryside. And these days, if you venture to country parks on weekends, sometimes you find them pretty crowded on some very famous trails. People will be there hiking, camping, taking nature photography, students having their field trips, etc. And these are very important assets to us, especially during difficult times, like in SARS or during the financial crisis. We saw a big influx of visitors to the countryside, to the country parks. And if you think about the health implications, it's immense, because in the cities, there's not a lot of room or not a lot of incentive for people to do physical exercise. But if you go to our countryside, which is so accessible, then people can walk for kilometers and do the jogging, and this provides a great contribution to our physical health. And also, it's a good way to get away from the stress from the city. So also contribute to our mental health. And a study by Civic Exchange in 2002 estimated the recreational value worth $340 million. And I would say that's an underestimation, because at that time, the number of visitors is a lot lower than now. And if you just go past the city to the countryside, and you find it's so beautiful. So it's unmatched natural beauty. Whether you are actually inside it, or when you're lucky enough, you look outside the window, or traveling around in a double-decker, you see these clear green mountains and lovely blue sea. So that actually contributes to the quality of life. And arguably, it also helps to retain talents in Hong Kong. And I do encourage you to go inside the forest or inside into the country parks, and then you find all sorts of interesting wild animals and plants. So for the BSAP process, as Simon said, it's a participatory process, and actually a number of us have been participated in the process, including WWF. And through all these focus groups and working groups, we came up with something like 400 recommendations, more than 400 recommendations. Some are very specific, very detailed, some are very high level. And from the point of view of WWF, we think the key priorities for Hong Kong in the coming 5 years and beyond would be to conduct strategic environmental assessments to formulate regional development and conservation plans. Because Hong Kong is a small place, we are facing a lot of pressure to meet our housing needs and other social needs. So how to reconcile between conservation and urbanization, that's very, very important. And we need a comprehensive planning. And also marine protected areas, very important because we have 40% country parks, but our marine parks and marine reserves, that accounts for less than 2%. That's actually an HE biodiversity target asking for at least 10% as marine protected areas. The deep bay wetlands, very important. It's a Ramsar site of international importance. So we need to expand and enhance the protection of deep bay wetland. The country park systems, very well established, covering 40%. But if you look at it, there are a lot of gaps, what we call the country park enclaves, covering important habitats that are underrepresented in the existing protected areas. And we need a official list of threatened species using the IUCN Red List. A lot of information has been gathered, but it's time to now properly assess our species. And for those that are highly threatened, like the pangolin or the golden coin turtle or the Chinese white dolphin, we need to formulate species action plan with very specific targets. And last of all, the Convention on Biological Diversity is not just about conservation, it's also about sustainable use of our biological resources. If you look at Hong Kong, we're actually not using a lot of our biodiversity directly, but we're importing a lot from other countries. So it is our responsibility and also to our interest to make our use sustainable. So there's a need to reduce the Hong Kong ecological footprint. And the way forward, as Simon said, soon there will be a public consultation about the BSEP. I think it's important for the NGO community to fully participate in that, to utilize this opportunity to express your views, and also spread the word and get others excited. And there's a need to raise awareness, very, very important. But talking is not a very effective way to reach people. We actually have such a beautiful countryside so close to us. So let's try to get people experience nature by themselves and try to get them find the answers themselves. And last, there's still a lot of knowledge gaps. We talk about a lot of these species, but actually if you look at invertebrates, look at a lot of insect groups, they are understudied or not studied at all. So try to get, especially younger students and younger generations, to get interested and to be trained as citizen scientists, and then share the knowledge and joy. Thank you.